If you're able to find that problem and then have the conversation, either publicly or privately, around how you can solve it, that's how you make yourself most hireable.
A lot of the very recognizable shapes are usually from set decorator, who's meticulous in like the language of the set. It's more intentional.
I always get so impressed by how close the Unreal Engine version that has the red border is to the final shots. The one on the top is actually completely lit out of Unreal. You can literally make Unreal look exactly like real life. Welcome to Creative Check-In. Today we're going to talk about some of our experience on the Star Wars TV shows. Safari and I were lucky enough to be on 6 of the seasons or 7 of the earliest seasons. Which seasons were those, Safari?
Mandalorian Season 1, Mandalorian Season 2, then Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Mandalorian Season 3, and then Ahsoka at the same time, and then Skeleton Crew.
So today we wanted to talk about what worked on those shows, what didn't, and show a lot of the visuals that we created to really break them down, and maybe people have something to learn from it. Some of the stuff we will be focusing on will be the process of art direction, will be the process of executing the build out of the sets, managing the art department or the virtual art department, which is what we used to call it. What else do you want to go into, Safari?
Going into process of taking art department stuff into the VAD and then turn over stuff from VAD to ILM, and of how we scouted and onboarded key creatives and all that kind of stuff.
Out of all those projects, which one do you feel like felt the most chaotic?
Well, the one most chaotic, I think, was Book of Boba Fett. It was the first major project in the pandemic era, which was like everyone was remote. We had started on Book of Boba Fett on or near June 2020, like May or June, but that was fresh into lockdown, and it was trying to make sure everyone was set up remotely, and we were delivering computers to all the key creatives' houses, and kind of managing emotions with the team, and kind of making checking in to make sure people were okay and doing work at the same time. And a lot of the process was similar, but it had to be tweaked based on this new remote workflow.
So how many shows? What number is this one in the Star Wars shows that we worked on?
We had done seasons 1 and 2 prior of The Mandalorian.
Of The Mandalorian. And that was over how much time? Like a year and a half?
About accumulatively, or from the first time we...
Or I guess, like, how much time went by from when we started The Mandalorian Season 1 to when we started Boba Fett?
I want to say it was 2 years, because that was in...
Yeah.
I think it was 2017 or 2018 that we started. I think 18. Yeah. So that was... so then like a year later, we'd start on the next one, and then that was kind of the cadence of going back onto those projects, and then they would air like about a year and a half after starting.
So then that means we were working with this team on Mandalorian Season 1 and Season 2. Even after the shows ended, we would often do a lot of like tech work to get prepared for the next show. Past Season 2 of The Mandalorian, we had developed a virtual location scout that was hosted in a room, funny enough, the same room that Lion King used to host their virtual location scouts out of Unity. We actually replaced that setup for a virtual location scout process out of Unreal Engine. And so when things went remote on the third season, or on the third show, which is Book of Boba after The Mandalorian Season 2, that's when we had to go remote because of the pandemic, which forced us to then figure out a way to do the virtual location scouts remotely. And that was the first time that I think anyone had done, I'm pretty certain, the virtual location scout with Unreal remotely. Want to move into how we got into the room. I think a lot of people ask us, like, how do you get those jobs? If I'm a studio, if I'm a company, how did you even get into The Mandalorian? And then we mentioned all those shows. That was a multi-year deal that we had on multiple seasons that I think a lot of people want to get that kind of work. So a lot of people ask us about this process. How did we first connect with Lucasfilm, Safari?
We had started to get into VR back in 2014 when it was pretty hot, and we were wanting to do more like a VR game. So we had started learning Unreal Engine, and we had done a couple jobs that were small-time VR stuff. But then Andrew Jones actually reached out to you to bring us into a project that he was working on. This was a VR demo, like an experience. That was an underwater submarine experience. So we had worked on that with him first, and then we got into Jurassic World VR, a demo for that, for the company that Andrew Jones was at. And so we were working on that for a bit, and we'd gotten a really good result. And he really liked our work. So he, when he was starting on Call of the Wild, he brought us over to that to help out with the virtual art department and setting up scouts in VR, just to like have a single person in VR just to check out the environment, and to for the director and the DP to scout and to give their feedback. And then after a little bit of time on that, he left to go to the Mandalorian, and they were starting to do their initial thoughts on how to do production. LED volume stuff was talked about, and virtual location scouting was coming up. So he naturally thought of us to come over and help out with that process.
Andrew Jones is the production designer on The Mandalorian. I love that when Safari, when you talk about it, the start of your journey with Andrew Jones is on that VR project. I had worked with Andrew Jones in my first job. We were working on Alice in Wonderland. That was pretty cool. After that, we worked on Wizard of Oz, which is awesome because I worked with Sam Raimi, and with Andrew Jones and with Robert Stromberg, which is the production designer on Wizard of Oz. Andrew Jones wasn't a production designer yet. He was an art director. And so at the time I was working at the third floor, years later, Andrew Jones asked me to supervise the Jungle Book. And after the Jungle Book was when we decided to quit our jobs at the studios and actually start a company. So I go way back with Andrew. So when I, he's called us time and time again, I think. Even when I was at another company, he would just call us. Like, I'd been working with him for a long time. And so when we went in to help him with this project, we had already earned his trust. And it wasn't just me. I remember the good part of doing the VR project together, Safari, was that he wanted to vet you. Mm-hmm. I remember being like, Andrew, Safari's legit. And he's like, he doesn't work in pre-production. He didn't believe in you. We had like a testing period. Mm-hmm. Let's test Safari period. But that's how it is. He's a production designer, so the proof mm-hmm. is in the pudding.
So looking back, what made us hireable? What advice would you give others trying to work with top-tier studios?
What made us hireable? At the time, I've been in the art department my whole career, and there's a complaint that I've heard a lot by the production designers that say that they do things in pre-production and then they have to rebuild them in production and they have to rebuild them in post. That phrase was one of the biggest motivators for our company. We wanted to fix that. I think that was, so finding an offering, finding something that you can answer is one of the biggest ways I think that we were able to become hireable. We knew the questions that we wanted to answer. The second thing is building the team that can answer it. Right? We had, at the time, when we first founded, we knew that we needed a visualization person or someone that was very integrated in the art department. That was me. We knew that we wanted to have really high quality visualization because as part of the production designer being involved, we wanted to make it look pretty enough, funny enough for the cinematographer and the production designer to be involved, because the director, he's okay working in grayscale and setting his shots, and as long as he knows composition, he's fine. But that combination of putting together the art department aspects, the VFX aspects, and then bringing in the game developer to help us actually not only be people that can make very pretty environments, but technically support any customization or challenge that these films were going to come at us with, right? Because we wanted to customize these things for anyone that's working with us, partly because they're filmmakers, and if the game engine works like a game engine, we wanted it to work closer to what a filmmaker would want to work with. So that's how we made ourselves hireable. We actually were thinking about that time and time again. By the time we got The Mandalorian, we were a couple years in. So we had refined the visuals that we wanted to share with them. Like, Andrew Jones didn't just call us. I was emailing Andrew Jones for years. Yo, look at this test. Hey, don't you think that the game engine's ready for the art department? Hey, what are you doing over there? Like, so there was a conversation happening, and there's always a conversation happening when we are trying to share something out there, even on social media. Like, I am trying to teach people something, hopefully something that can add value to them. And If it's not going to make the movie cheaper, it's going to make your life easier. That's the way that we made ourselves hireable, and I think that's also how you are, if you're able to find that problem and then have the conversation, either publicly or privately, around how you can solve it, I think that's how you make yourself most hireable. That conversation comes with visuals, right? Because sometimes you try to explain things with words and you can't. It has to come with the material that's going to help the aha moment of like, yes, I get it. That is going to work. So maybe you're not someone that can offer a big solution at an organizational level, but you definitely can with your skill set. And that's on all of us to figure out. I want to go through the different projects. Safari's going to walk through some of the visuals. He set a little Miro board up. We're going to go through every project. We're going to talk about the unique challenges that each had. And we are going to, well, first of all, we're going to talk about overarching process. Before going into the specific projects, I wanted to ask Safari to maybe give us an overview on what the virtual art department process was for these shows. And I can elaborate with you, right? So, but can you start with explaining what the virtual art department is and what's the process?
I'll try my best. The virtual art department...
And I'm here with you.
The virtual art department is an extension of the art department. We handle primarily the virtual set extension in the LED volume for ICV effects. A virtual art department can be used for non-ICV effects, LED screen shoots, but it's the planning of the set extension beyond the physical set. And this could be used on blue screen or backlot.
I actually want to pick this up from there really quick. So the virtual art department is a service, or it's a name that was created, I don't know when, but that's something that they use there. I think it was coined on Avatar, not Avatar The Last Airbender, but Avatar, the blue people. And it's a name that was created for a digital team that would be within the art department. So the art department, even today, is mostly physical. And because they're mostly physical, and because movies have gone more and more in the route of VFX, it's become more difficult for art department artists to really get exactly what they want in post, because so much is digital, so much can change. On Avatar, on that film, they have, from years ago, James Cameron has been designing both physically but digitally. And that's where a lot of this name and approach started. Fast forward to The Mandalorian, which is years later from Avatar. And on this project, Andrew Jones wanted a Unreal Engine team that he can manage in the art department so that he can design a lot of these scenes and design these scenes with the cinematographer, because he's a production designer, but if he has the cinematographer and he knows the camera, he all of a sudden can control the budget. He knows how much exactly he's going to build. They can communicate and potentially reduce the costs of the production, because all of a sudden, as a production designer, he's not overbuilding those sets, those worlds. And as we joined the process, we came in, they already were doing some digital work inside of the art department, but when we came in to both make it run in real time, make it look photoreal, make it look really high quality in pre-production, and make it a process that is an actual art department process, because there were other people involved, maybe with VFX backgrounds, maybe with previs backgrounds, but then I come from the art department. And so the virtual art department, if I was going to explain what it is, it's all the same approaches that a production designer, art directors have in a film and TV production, but with a real-time team instead of the physical team. That means that if you're an art director or production designer on a film, or a director, and you want to design using Unreal Engine, then you might consider bringing in some of those artists into your production, in pre-production, early on, when you're trying to figure out the script, you're trying to figure out what scenes to make in what process. Maybe some of them are going to be physical production. Maybe some of them are going to be VFX. Maybe some of them will go to virtual production. When you're figuring out all that process, you might bring in some real-time artists And that might be called the virtual art department. Or it might be called your real-time team. Or it might be called, right? There's no specific. Every production I've been on, they'll call it something else. Like there's no, what do you call that, industry standard for this name yet. And that's why I hesitate sometimes now to call it the virtual art department, because it's really a real-time team in pre-production. And so that's a real-time team in pre-production that is following the process of the art department. That's how I explain the virtual art department. You want to elaborate on that or disagree?
No.
Since it's not something that's an industry
No,
standard.
that's a great explanation of it. And that's right. It's a team that's real time, very much focused on iteration, where we're week by week, day by day, is just constantly making changes so that we're more close to the concept team that's trying to understand the layout of the set, trying to make it high quality still, but it is that feedback loop of here's a physical set, here's the extension of this set. Does this all melt together well? They can jump into VR if they want to. But otherwise, it's a team that is focused on making sure that we're first working on broad strokes and adding detail and complexity, and then adding higher quality assets so that we can get closer to that final look.
So I know that when I talk to you a lot, you value the deliverable a lot, which is the sets and the design of a high quality. Obviously, that's your job, you're delivering. But I think we often miss what I feel like is the most important part, which is the work that goes into figuring out what is going to go through that process. And I don't think you're designing sets. I think you're designing scenes. Like when you're doing virtual location scouts, you come out of that with storyboards, with characters represented, with the environment represented, with the lighting represented. So like you have the story team putting characters. You have the cinematographers and the directors putting in camera. You have the production designer putting in the environments. Do you feel like we're underselling the process? And this is a candid question. I'm actually just candid question. Do you feel like, because I do the same thing. I talk about the sets and I'm trying to, when I went back, Safari, and I saw your work, I felt like I've been explaining it wrong, especially when I went and did a deep dive with you, because when I saw the work that was coming out of the virtual location scouts, we're not designing sets. We're designing the fucking movie, the scenes. Mm-hmm. And after the virtual location scout, you have like 50, whatever, let's say 15 different storyboard shots, some still shots, 50 different still scenes. And what happens at that point is the producer grabs that with the team and they go, okay, can we do this, and what process would we use to do this? Okay, we understand the scene. Now what's going to virtual production? Oh, 20% of those storyboards are going to virtual production, or to the virtual art department team. Design that to final now and make that work on the screen, make that work in camera VFX. But the other 80% we forget to highlight, which is the other 80% that was designed in the virtual location scouts, that goes to the physical production team, that goes to the VFX team, right? The physical production team, because the set designers need to design now these Unreal Engine environments to be something that can actually be shot on, right? Like we're like concept artists. We are closer to the concept team. We don't have an architecture degree. We would never dare to build something that was going to be physical that can kill someone, right? That's something where we would design it in a concept phase, but then we work with the set designer. So we have that relationship. Another output of the virtual location scout is the output that goes to the VFX team. All these assets that are worked in Unreal, these assets came from different places. Some of them are asset warehouses online. Some of them are from the VFX team. Some of them are actually from the set decoration teams. They already have certain things that we sometimes bring in, and we ingest them into these scouts. After the scout, the second team that we might consider sending these to is the VFX team. They can take all those assets now and it goes straight into their pipeline, right? Contrary to how it was maybe 10 years ago, this has gotten so much easier now, going from a real-time pipeline, virtual production pipeline, to VFX. And then the third group that we are obviously delivering after those scouts, I think are the three maybe main groups, is the LED screen stage team. The team that is now going to shoot into them. And on the Mandalorian and on the Star Wars projects, we had two different kind of deliverables that we would send to that team that we'll talk about later as well. So I want to ask you again, do you feel like we undersell this fucking process? How do we stop underselling it, right? Because it's designing the fucking movie.
It really is, because it's the heads of department coming together.
Yeah.
In these shows, it was in VR. They're able to explore the scene. There's chess pieces. They're all placing cameras. They're like, how does this work? How does this scene work? DOP is gonna place camera over here. Favreau's flying around, looking at other stuff, other angles, talking with Andrew Jones, the production designer. They're talking about another scene, or they're just able to freely talk about what's happening in this sequence of shots. And you're right, it is this, at the end, a package for all these departments to use. And even some sets that weren't put on the LED screen, sets like in Ahsoka, there's a set that's like a Stonehenge set that is on the edge of a cliff. That was thought to be on the LED screen, but it ended up being a lot of work to get right. Like eventually it was omitted from the LED screen shoot.
And it went through a traditional, so just to clarify that, you grabbed the real-time team, you designed it for Unreal and for a shoot out of the virtual production stage, but it went into a traditional VFX pipeline at the end of the day, right?
It was thought to be ICVFX.
Yeah.
But eventually got omitted and then put into I think it was like another stage blue screen, so that it's a traditional VFX shots. But the work we did was handed off to VFX to show this was the intent the entire time. Like the design of this place, the look, the feel, all that was translated into the final shots, even though it was traditional FX.
Can you speak to me about when you said something here that I like, which is like it was selected for in-camera VFX? What do you mean by that?
For the first few months, they are going through shoot schedules and methodologies of each scene, and they're planning the entire production. So they're figuring out talent schedule, when they're renting certain things, and making sure that it's the most optimized shooting schedule. So there are sets that make sense to put on the LED screen or the back lot or the stage or location. And so that's all done in the first few months. It changes after that, but the idea is they're really honing in what sets will work on the LED screen or other places, or where these scenes are going to be shot.
And when we speak sets, we are speaking scenes, right? Mm-hmm. Like when they're making those decisions, and they're not thinking about the set, they're thinking about the scene. Mm-hmm. So maybe the scene that is raining won't be on the LED screen stage for obvious reasons, right? Versus the deserts, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, the Mandalorian will be. And those are the decisions that you're working through early on. Like they're literally, they start by making that decision on paper. They read the script. They go, oh, we think this will go this route, this route, this route. But then they go and they do a visualization, or they start with concept art. Then the concept art might go, oh no, you know what? We thought that could be a world that we can do on the stage, but no, that could go outside, right? But maybe then past the concept art, you have to do a visualization. And then the visualization might tell you, actually, no, we figured out how to do it in the stage again. And it could come back. So it's really a dance with those decision makers to help them arrive at the best solution to both get them the best quality and use their budget most effectively.
One or a couple examples are in Ahsoka. When we first are introduced to Ahsoka, she's walking down some ruins in the desert. That set was going to be on the LED screen. And so we were doing some work and some visualization, and eventually got to a point where they thought it's too much. She's needing to run a lot away from an explosion. And so that thought of, okay, for that specific thing, they need to shoot that on the stage somewhere else, not the LED screen stage. So it's too much. It's too little of a distance. So they were needing to do it somewhere else. Already they were thinking, should all these shots be shot on the LED screen stage, or should we just shoot it in the some sound stage?
On location. Or on a soundstage, yeah.
Or location out back lot, because it's also quality of light.
So did they, just to close the thought from earlier, did they flip flop? Did they go from VFX? Was there like a, what was the
I think
the timeline?
it was omitted from the LED screen stage. It was done another method. It was either backlot or soundstage.
But they had started. Did they start thinking that they were going to be able to do that on location or on the stage, and then they went to on location, and vice
Yeah,
versa?
initially it was a set that was for the ICVFX LED screen stage.
Nice.
And so there was, even when,
And as you're designing it, like you guys had, I'm really just curious how you guys got to it. So you guys, let's say at first, let's say they read the script, they go, okay, this is a perfect fit for the LED stage. We're going to design it with Safari. What happens next? How'd that go?
we're blocking out the set. We're starting with a block out, and then we go into chess pieces, and we bring in the director of photography to set cameras, and then that first initial plan is with an LED screen in Unreal placed, so that they can see what the physical set looks like, how much room we have for action. And so in those conversations, as we were developing the look of the pillars and the look of the surrounding environment based off of Doug Ching's concept art, we would set all these scenes up, which was her arriving at the ruins, walking through the ruins, and then where she ends up cutting a hole in the floor to drop down into a room. So all those places were LED volume locations.
So you guys, so they're like, okay, Safari, we want to make this set. Like, this is the action. You grab it. You do tech viz. You create tech viz, which is basically planning out the sequence so that we're not overbuilding. Like, obviously, if we know where the cameras are and what the sequence is, we don't have to build as much as if we didn't. So then you create that tech viz. The tech viz reveals to you how hard it's going to be to build it. Like how, I guess she's running a long distance. So it's like, how do you run a long distance on a stage? Maybe they thought they were going to use, just, you could tell me wrong. Maybe they thought they were going to use a treadmill or something to have her running. The content was going to go by her, something like that. Where did it break? Why not?
Honestly, I think it was around something similar to like a treadmill. Like it was not going to look realistic, or it was wanting to be a wider shot than just a close up. And then with a treadmill, you have to replace the floor and a whole bunch of other work. So it ended up being, well, if a person's just running a short distance or on a treadmill, it's going to not look as natural. So I think that was the deciding factor, along with maybe you can't get a lot of light in the volume. So like a sun's not going to really work in the volume. The ceiling is too low. You can't, for their volume, they can't take a lot of panels out. A lot of infrastructure up above is blocking sunlight or would block the light coming in. So having to figure all that out, I think they just thought it's too much cleanup. It's too much stuff to have to figure out and fix. So we might as well just dress up somewhere else with enough runway. I'm not sure if they built, how many columns they built, but that line of thinking of this is too much work for the volume, for all these things, let's just go somewhere else, shoot that how we normally would.
I could picture the meeting, and I think just to paint it again, right? When you say that, when I asked you, like, when did it break? Part of why it's hard for us to tell you exactly where it broke is because we're the facilitators. And when Safari's saying that they identified this, he really does mean they identified it. When we're hosting these meetings, they're all there, and I could picture I've been in a lot of these meetings, right? So I can picture the conversation between the director trying to get his shots and placing his characters in Unreal while we're watching, and I could picture the production designer asking the director to come over and hey, look at how much this person's walking. Look at how your shots are falling outside of the volume. Look at how it's hard to get the set decoration in the foreground to hide the screen. Like, there's a multitude of reasons why you can't go with an LED screen stage. But the conversation is very organic, and it happens through the camera. Like, through the camera that the director is setting and that the cinematographers are setting so that it's easier to make those calls.
It's after also multiple meetings. It's not just, they may have that thought in the first meeting, but by meeting 6, they've reviewed enough. They understand more about the complications. So then that length of time
and the sequence.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we are at the design stage, like the very early stages. Sometimes it's a run sequence and it turns into a talk sequence. Like it's like it could completely a scene could completely 180 when we're designing, right? Maybe a lot of times they're also doing rewrites. Actually, not a lot of times. They're always doing rewrites. A script is never finished. Always, it's like you would think that these big projects have scripts. No, they don't. So those decisions, like you said, you start on week one. Week one is your first virtual location scout, which is the meeting where you get everyone together to look at that set and work as if they were working on production, putting cameras, reviewing the scenes. By week 6, which is maybe 5 reviews in that world, the story is fleshed out, the scenes are fleshed out, like, and it might have, like Safari said, the process completely changed in this case. In this example, it sounds like they started in one route and they went with another route by the end of the 5-6 weeks. But what I think is really cool about this is that it's not throwaway work, right? The designing process has to happen. The main difference that I love about this process is by you having a real-time team in pre-production, this is a team that now all of a sudden has the interest of the art department, not of the effects team. So since they're the art department's team, they'll deliver those assets to anybody. If you have 15 vendors, they all use the same foundations. They all actually start from a place where those key creators critiqued. That's not something you're going to get if the virtual art department is attached to a VFX company like ILM or MPC or some of the big companies, because obviously there's an invested interest in using their own pipeline. And why would an ILM send assets to Weta? I mean, believe me, I've been in that room and it's impossible to do. It's really hard to get them to let go of those assets and actually do it for the film. Like, hey, we're trying to design something. You already have it. Like, send it to the art department. They want to take it further, and then they want to make sure that that asset that they worked on, everyone starts from the same foundation. You would think that that's easier, but no. If you have multiple vendors, it becomes a whole political thing. It's important for the art department and pre-production and production to have its own team, I think, for this to work effectively. Independent from the major studios that obviously have a gigantic engine and people they need to feed, so it makes sense that their business model is going to take you to that pipeline.
Now, on Mando Season 1, since you were the virtual art department supervisor, what were we actually trying to prove with the first proof of concept?
So on Mandalorian Season 1, when we were called into that project, we were tasked with developing I remember he called us in there because he wanted something that was at the speed of previs. He wanted us to design environments with him because I've been designing environments with him for a long time. So he wanted that similar process that previs was giving him, but for the art department. And he wanted it to be out of Unreal Engine. And I remember Jon Favreau, when we had our first meeting with Jon Favreau, he said, he gave us a quote where he's like, he was playing The Last of Us 2, and he was asking, if The Last of Us 2 looks this good, why can't we have photoreal worlds out of Unreal run in film? It's not real time. So he was that aware to understand real time versus traditional rendering. And so that was a big part of this whole endeavor. It was give us a process that's for film, out of a game engine that looks photoreal. That was, I think, the proof of concept. And I think we have some stuff we can show. You want to share the screen really quick?
Yeah, I'll do the video first.
Yeah, let's do that. So this is, funny enough, when we did this proof of concept right here, we did something similar, but after we created the proof of concept the first month on The Mandalorian Season 1, they made me sign a waiver that said that I could never show the original one. So after Season 1 of The Mandalorian, Safari and I created this. This was in 2017?
2019?
In 2019. So we built this in 2019, and we were just showing how these were all real time. This is running in real time, and we could scout this. You can actually jump to a virtual location scout, and all these assets can be moved. This episode is focused on the design process, but we will have a follow-up that'll go through the virtual location scouting process, because that was a big point of this proof of concept. However, the point of showing you this was just the fact that this was actually what we created to secure the Mandalorian job. It was something like this. We actually created 3 different sets as well. There's that. I wanted to show a few images of what it looked like during that time. So here you can see Safari on the top left. He's hanging out doing photogrammetry in the top middle. All of this was the work that we were doing during the proof of concept. They wanted to prove out that those physical sets, the physical assets can actually make it into those environments. So we did photogrammetry with the art department. That was the first time that Andrew Jones and that team had done that with us, so that was really great. At the top right, you're seeing some of the first LED screens that we tested, and we were really trying to test pixel pitch, color, etc. And they used our sets to do all the tests on all the original screens. Bottom left, we were also doing a model test. So we weren't only doing photogrammetry of big assets. If you see in the top middle one, you see someone on the left doing an outdoor photogrammetry, and you see Safari on the right. That's photogrammetry of a model. And then in the bottom center, you see one of the exteriors that we did. The middle bottom image is actually floating on legs with wheels, and it's a physical set. And then the background is the LED screen stage, and in collaboration with ILM, because I believe a lot of the set decoration from Star Wars came from them. We designed it and lit it. And then the bottom right, you could see the tests that we were doing. This was shortly after we started the project, because everything else landed as the project. That's the actual virtual location scout room. Those 3 computers have different headsets. When they put the headset on, they are transported into the location, and they can see each other and interact with each other. That's also the setup that when we got to Boba Fett, which was 2 years in, all of that went remote, or for the most part. Actually, it was the pandemic,
Yeah, it was,
so probably
it was all remote by then.
So zooming into these, if we go to the top left here real quick, okay. So here you could see a lot of the breakdowns that we did to show people, all right, if we can move on to the next area. So this middle image, the bottom one is a photo. Yeah. So we actually, when we posted this publicly, we asked people, okay, what's the photo? What's fake? And at this point, I think a lot of things have come through with this kind of technology, but obviously at the time, we were just showing people how you can do photogrammetry. All those assets at the top can be moved around independently and can be relit. And so the one on the top is actually completely lit out of Unreal. There's no post-color correction, and we're just showing how you can literally make Unreal look exactly like real life. And so that's what we're showing there. We can move on to the next area, please. Yep, and this is just showing some of the images around the photogrammetry and how we process those things. All right, moving on to the next area. Now, funny enough, when we created this showpiece, we got a letter from ILM where they thought that we were using the assets from the film. And here's an example of, we just went to a warehouse and we rented military crates. And so a lot of these military crates, we've been on movies forever. It's all the same crates. I've done so many sci-fi movies. What they do is, there's warehouses, set decoration warehouses, where you can go and you can rent these items. And when you rent those items, as a art department, production designer and art director, you take those onto your stage and you can redecorate them, literally repaint them, attach new items to them. And by doing so, you make them unique for your film. Safari, do you have the proof that shows that we weren't?
Unfortunately, I didn't have access to the collection of stuff that we sent.
When they sent us this take down the post email, we responded with a series of imagery. I had travel proof that I went and I did that shoot, and the dates that we did it, which were past the dates of the show, like the Mandalorian had already ended. When it ended, we went and we did that test. And we basically were able to, I mean, we did do 5 more seasons with them, so it was fine. It wasn't a big deal. So we were able to keep that up and secure more work with it.
Some images of the different environments that we did for season 1. There's only a few on here, but we did dozens of sets and variants.
This is actually the reel that we made for the Mandalorian season 1 after the show. or yeah, after doing on the project. And these virtual art department concepts are the imagery that we created with the art department. We also sculpted a lot of these rocks. We worked directly with the key creatives to design these scenes. This is actively missing all the character work and the cameras that we created in the virtual location scouts, but really this was focused on the environments. What I feel like we learned as a part of this process, and what it did was it really changed the way Jon Favreau, Andrew Jones, Greg Fraser, they all thought that we were going to work with them. It started just Safari and I, but after we did season 1 of The Mandalorian, we actually were able to take over the whole art department and grow a bigger team for season 2.
This is just a collection of images from Unreal and their final shot comparisons. This being Mando just has gotten the baby in, I think it's episode 2.
Are those final shots or are those Unreal? I can't even tell.
The top one is Unreal, the one with the red border. And the bottom 2 images are from the final show, the final shots from the show. Right image being a behind the scenes look. And this is just showing how we had brought in photogrammetry from, I believe this was photogrammetry from ILM, these rocks and outcropping. We organized this and planned out the shots, volume placement with production designer and direction of photography. Had a selection of ILM skies to go through. So we went through several versions of this set, and Greg Fraser landed on this sky, which you can see the similarities in the sky that was picked in the virtual art department. This is the sky that's in the final shot.
It's the same exact sky. Skies are actually a really important part of this process. Is those different skies.
It takes up so much of the scene, yeah, and there's a lot of attention for the kind of sky, the quality of sky, the type of environment it is. So it's not just put up any sky. They have to really think about what that final shot's going to be. Otherwise, you'd have to replace the entire background.
No, and it's like you said, look at that. That's how much, it's at least 50-60% sky in some of those scenes. Like the bottom right scene. Like the two bottom, select the two that are, those 2 shots, 2 bottom shots there, those are the actual final shots. All right, so I'm still so impressed. I always get so impressed by how close the Unreal Engine version that has the red border is to those, to the final shots. It's so impressive. It's part of why the process is so cool. Like you can design something now in pre-production that's actually going to get you the same result in post, and that's just not something that we had before. Anyone that works in film knows that the concept art doesn't represent what the movie's actually going to look like. It's a guiding post, but once you start getting into it, there's so many areas that a concept doesn't cover that this does.
And I honestly can't remember if there was a concept art for this scene. It's one of those where maybe there was some loose concept, but we would take that concept, maybe some reference, and then make something completely new. And then from there, we would sculpt it to what the production designer's thinking about. Director of photography is talking about horizon line. Maybe it's more flat. Maybe we're not having so many protrusions in the distance.
Can you draw me a line of where the physical set is?
Physical set is
nice. So over 50%, 60% of this frame is LED. Crazy. How about the next one? So this is all LED screen and character. Yeah. So anything outside of the white line is LED. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, and something to note though, I'm sure they tried to get everything in camera final, but things like this line with the cameras, for any wide shots, to get the shot, they would go that wide, and then in post they would have to fix that. But with the background being what it is and having the amount of information, I imagine the cleanup being a little easier.
You imagine, or it is easier?
I don't want to say that it is easier.
If you see here, we've already set up the shots. We know the sky that's in Unreal. They have all the shots planned out in Unreal. The camera that is in the LED screen stage is tracked. So you can take that tracked camera and put it in the same environment and know exactly where that sky aligns.
But also something to note, lighting isn't just a bunch of green spill, but having the actual values of the background, and then you can replace the background. It makes it a lot easier for the cleanup.
So we're going to keep looking at a couple of these, Safari, but I actually thought of some stuff that you said, if you can keep showing these. So you said there's a smaller can we go to this bottom left one right there? Yeah, let's go to this one. So in this one, if we look at the bottom one is the Unreal Engine scene, right? And look how close it matches the frame from the final shot. It just shows you that the cinematographer actually selected this. And they can even change the camera if they want in the final day, but they still choose to have a blueprint to go off of. Before we move on from this one, I want to go through all of these. I have two more questions I want to ask. So I have two more questions I want to ask. Can we go one by one on these and draw where the physical set is? First of all, show both of them, and we're going to identify this is the Unreal Engine one and this is the final one, and then draw a line on where the physical set interacts on the final shot.
Yeah, so like I said, bottom one is Unreal with camera placement and lighting by Greg Fraser. Top is the final shot. And physical set, they built out these foreground rocks based on some 3D models that we had also created. Don't know exactly where that horizon line is, but I'm going to go.
And something really cool about these rocks, all these physical rocks in the foreground were actually built physically. A model maker sculpted them. And then we actually photogrammetry them and brought them into Unreal and then sculpted on top of them to take them a little further to add that extra layer of detail. After we did that, that's the one you see in Unreal at the bottom. We then sent those to ILM, and they basically finalized the shot. But you could really see the influence of that pre-production team, and it's really cool to see the line of where the physical and the virtual is.
And for our purposes in the virtual art department, we really plan out the layout of physical set. We're not exactly focusing on making the physical set as close as possible to what it will be built as. That's up to the art department. We do a lot of work with making sure that the physical set, all the dressing, they've planned out and they know how it works with the virtual set. But our intention isn't to make that as pretty as possible. It's just indication.
So if you zoom into to add to that, zoom into the bottom one and circle what the physical set is in this bottom one. So as you can tell, what the areas that are more detailed in this one are the areas that are in the content. And you see that ground that's right under Mando. It's smooth and there's literally no detail there because we didn't have to do it. It's physical. It's real. The set decoration team's gonna go in there and they're gonna build that. We are very focused on the background, and we help the physical sets understand how it's gonna marry, how the physical is gonna marry with the virtual. So that's why if you see here, there's rocks that are close to the screens showing how it blends. But outside of that, we keep it very simple.
This one is the Jawas. They had taken Mando's ship apart, and then he's going to barter with them to get stuff back. So this set, I remember Greg Fraser saying that this was really difficult because the exposure wasn't feeling right for it being in shadow. If you were right behind this massive structure and exposing for the background that's actually sunlit.
I remember we worked on that fucking rock. We had so many iterations of that back mountain. Going back to the fact that when you look at these, what's in the shot, right? That's a hero rock. That's the hero of the environment. So we did a lot of work on that back piece. It started with some photogrammetry, I believe, from ILM, and then we just had to like tweak until we got to where we're at. The top one is Unreal Engine. The bottom one is the final shot. And it's funny when like the top one is already enough, typically to get. It looks like they might have added some more detail to the bottom one, but what I like about a lot of the in-camera VFX process is the lighting is real, right? So when you look at the bottom one, there's this quality of light that the lens gives you that's always really pretty. Where's the LED set? Did they build is this the one where they built the side of the fucking wheel of this gigantic thing?
Yeah, this whole thing.
I think so.
I forget how much do you remember how much they built?
I remember it was maybe not as deep. It was just like the front center area. It was something like that.
Here-ish.
Yeah. And then everything took place there for the other shots.
That's right, because they ended up
What's
here.
the physical? Yeah. So can you draw a line or draw over this bottom one to show where the physical set is?
So I want to say it is.
Yep.
With this.
Yeah, there you go. And so that big piece that he has on the left, they put that because when they were recording the shots looking at the characters into the vehicle, they had a physical background of the actual vehicle. And it was really impressive. It was crazy. It's those giant wheels, but life size. The physical set for this one was awesome.
Oh yeah, funny because they even threw in a bunch of reflective metally bits to take advantage of the volume. Actually didn't notice that before.
Good call. Yeah, good call.
You can kind of see.
Awesome.
This is probably matte painting.
Added. Yeah. Yep, added in post. Yeah. I actually don't think even with the drawing that you made, the yellow, if you go back to it, if you don't erase it, but the wheel only went back like a foot in depth. So no, go further, more, there.
Oh,
that deep. Yeah, it was something like that. It was like even more shallow. It was a very shallow. I remember it just being like an illusion. From the front, it looked really deep and stuff, but then when you went around it was obviously just a shell. All right, are you ready to move to the next one? Awesome. Yeah, I enjoyed working on this one. For this one, I remember we were really decals, everybody. We were really getting into decals and teaching the art department the power of decals. You know, games are really impressive because the way they stay optimized is in a way that an art department really understands. It's just reusing stuff. And so art departments, obviously, they have to build physical sets. They're not going to, if there's an engine in this shot and then the next scene has an engine, they're going to reuse that physical engine that's 300 pounds. They're not going to redo that thing. So I remember when we were building this set, a lot of the education that I was giving the production designer and the key creatives surrounded the power of decals inside of Unreal Engine and how we can create all that moss and all that dirt through an image that you intersect with the geometry. And I remember them being like, oh my God, you just mean you copy this over and over and you make it look like a completely new kind of mud patch? So this is really reusing a lot of the same textures so that it can run at the frame rate that we needed. And so on the left, can you show us the virtual art department version, please? You could zoom in on those two. So the top left is our plan. The yellow part is the physical set, and then what's not yellow is actually what was in the content.
In our Unreal scene, they needed to know how his helmet would look, so we ended up needing a very reflective helmet, just so that Greg Fraser can understand the shape of the reflection on his helmet. So things like so we made it very crisp, very reflective, just to make sure that he was seeing everything. And then the actual helmet was a lot more dull, less reflective.
When we started this project, we actually did tests with the helmet. There were chrome helmets and there were brushed metal helmets. And so the version that they went with was the brushed metal. But like Safari said, when we were working with the cinematographer on the stage, the helmets, we did tests with the chrome one and the brushed metal one. However, when working with the cinematographer on the top one, you can see that his helmet's really reflective, and it's going back to what Safari was saying, is to help the production team know where to position the sky. Because the sky is reflecting above off of the screens, right? And you can rotate it in Unreal and you could find that position of how, maybe there's a cloud that you want to see on that helmet. Maybe you want to see, we're even tweaking the environment to have those shadows. If you see in his helmet, looks like there's a building in the background. So all of that is being designed with the team in pre-production. So what's the name of this one, Safari?
This one is Pelly's Hanger.
I love this one so much. Can we look at the way we planned it? This one's an awesome one because this one included going from an inside to an outside, and it had scenes that were like under this awning, but then they go into the ship area. And I guess this isn't showing how much of the ship was built. So can you draw some yellow over the ship? Thank you.
Remind me of how much.
So in this one, they had the physical set, anything yellow, plus what Safari's drawing over was physical, and the rest of it was extended. I don't know that much about Star Wars. Is this like a famous hangar in Star Wars?
The hangar is where the Millennium Falcon was, where Luke and Obi-Wan are brought to the Millennium Falcon by Han Solo, and they get in the Millennium Falcon as they're being shot up. The shots were just in this at this eye level, and then in the special edition shots where it shows the Millennium Falcon lifting up and blasting off showed the rest of the shape of the hangar. but that was, I remember it being small.
The original one, which is obviously a model.
It was a
right?
miniature.
It was
Yeah.
it was a miniature. Sorry, it was a miniature. So that's pretty awesome. So there was a miniature in the original. Was that digitized?
It wasn't. No, they didn't have that anymore.
So did you digitize this one?
This,
Did we make this one from the get go or from scratch? Or
I remember this being from scratch.
yeah, I remember this one was a lot of work. Like we gave this one some
Oh,
love.
yeah.
I did a lot of set decoration on this one. This is one of the most memorable ones for me because I was I had to get on the box to help finish this one, and I did a lot of the just placing random shit in the background to try to fill it up. I remember working on the piping too, like Andrew Jones asking about the piping. Can you zoom into those? And so what we're showing here is we do a lot of work with the cinematographers and production designers. So the cinematographers are looking to find different lighting variations because maybe you're visiting this location multiple times in the show. So you need to reset the environment for every time they're going to visit. It's not like it's going to look exactly the same. So this is one version. And then if you can show us the other ones, this is another lighting scenario. Looks like it's a little brighter, maybe more closer to like 1 or 2 o'clock.
He was also exploring 2 lighting scenarios so that when he's shooting Mando coming down from the ramp, he's got 1 lighting scenario, which is backlit. And then when he's shooting the opposite direction, it's backlit as well. So it's taking into account how he would normally wait at a location. Morning, they're going to shoot these shots. And then towards the end of the day, when the sun's on the opposite side, they're going to set up for the rest of the shots.
One thing that's pretty funny about working with cinematographers and on films is if you watch them, the subject is typically backlit. There are a couple rules that came in, but 2 of the ones that I liked was, well, one of them is that we try to always get the characters to be semi-backlit. Another one was even within the same scene, they would change the lighting, vary the lighting a tiny little bit. If you can imagine yourself shooting outside at the desert or in the jungle, there's clouds that are going over, there's change in lighting. And so even if we were just going to do this location, we had multiple different versions, slightly different variations to that version so that you can get that irregularity that you would get on location, but now you're getting it in the LED screen.
Night scenario where they were trying to figure out what kind of practical lighting they would need. So like these floor lamps, any wall lamps. We had a couple tall, skinny lamps, and then what these like red and white kind of landing lights look like.
What do you call those moon lights?
Like floor ones?
The ones that I no, the big ones that they use.
Oh, the
to
Musco?
use the Musco lights. One of the things that is really fun about this is you get to customize your lighting to the different cinematographers. So on this one that you would use Musco lights a lot, but here's another example of us helping. We mentioned earlier that we don't do a lot of the physical set. Like the physical set is going to be physical, so why would we fully build that out? But in this example, what we are experimenting with is the lighting in the physical set, because the same lighting that lights the physical set we want to replicate in the virtual set. We don't want to have different lights in the virtual set with different values. We're trying to match them. When Safari was lighting this, I remember we went through various different lights. Like those shapes of the lights changed. It was allowing the cinematographers and the production designers and the directors to select which route they wanted to go. And so here's the final shots. Could you draw where the physical is?
The physical set, this was here, this thing, all the way around, and then this ramp. From the original Star Wars, they had these big yellow shapes in the background. It's these compressors or something that to do with construction, like road construction, because they're real things from like Britain from the 70s. He had seen these things around. He wanted to have them in the set, but maybe not exactly like they were in the original Star Wars.
Could you draw a circle around the shape, the thing we're talking about?
Oh,
Just
yeah.
so we could. It's all good. Yeah.
So these suckers.
Can you draw the lines of where this physical set interacts with this one?
It is here, tall bit.
Yeah, this one was cool too, because a lot of those background pieces, some of them was photogrammetry, but a lot of them were just built out from scratch. Like there's that, I just recognize all the set deck.
A lot of this is airplane parts, the set dressing, and anything that was bigger, bulky stuff. Team member Gio would take these things outside photogrammetry we would ingest it, even if it's a really quick solve, have that model, throw that into the background so that Amanda Serino can go in and see how everything's collected and actually set dress the virtual set.
So what do you mean by ingest?
Well, Gio would take photos, bring them in to reality capture, and then solve the 3D geometry, texture it, clean that up as best as you can. And then even in that rough state, even if it's still has some floating geometry, we try to clean it up as much as possible. You would export that and send it to our virtual art department team. And then we would ingest that, import that into Unreal Engine. And then we'd had a photorealistic asset so we can populate the virtual set.
When we were working on this, we're working on it in LA at Playa Vista. There's a backlot that is a mile away. Backlot has airplane parts and has set decoration. Gio Shaw was our employee at the time and responsible for photogrammetry. I would take a trip with him to the backlot. We would take photos. I actually have photos of this too, Safari, of some of these trips that we would take. We would take photos of this set decoration, and when Safari says ingest them, it means taking that prop from the set decoration and bringing it into Unreal in a way where the set decorator could then set decorate the virtual world in the same way they would set decorate the physical. Right? So there's a process there of ingestion by the photogrammetry artist that's more than just processing it and doing the photogrammetry. We have a process that allows us to, within a couple hours, having it inside of Unreal so that that production designer can design as fast as possible because they got to review that stuff tomorrow. So that process is what allowed us to furnish a lot of this set. It's a mixture of airplane parts and then handcrafted sci-fi stuff. And ILM sci-fi stuff too, because they sent us some of their previous models, grayscale models, and we used some of that. It's maybe in this scene, but yeah, I believe we had some of that too.
Oh yeah, that stuff was great for random sci-fi gag, just like ambiguous technology that's all around a set. But a lot of the very recognizable shapes are usually from set decorator, who's picking out, who's meticulous in like the language of this set. They're not just going to find some random thing like that ILM GAC. It's more intentional. It's like, here's something that has a good shape that looks like it could be a mechanical thing in this environment. So she did a lot of work with finding what kind of airplane parts would work in this.
Who is needed in VFX movies? Set decorators. Set decorators are awesome. On this one, it's Amanda Serino, and they really are experts at making fake worlds look like they work like real worlds. It's one of my favorite memories with Amanda, which is someone that I also have worked with for many years, even before The Mandalorian. I knew her, Safari. She's one of Andrew Jones's people, so she also goes from film to film a lot of times. I remember we were stacking those crates in the background, and she gave us a little lecture of how it is that the military stakes crates, because obviously those crates have to go on airplanes, they have to go on all these different missions, and they can't just be falling over. So we stack them normally, right? We just go pop, 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 pop. But she's like, they have ways that they lock, they have ways that they go, and she really pushed us to make the design, the language, feel like something that can actually be real. You know what movie I thought about needing a set decorator was Thor Ragnarok. Goddamn, I like that movie, but there's so much shit everywhere. I'm like, this background is like like they vomited shit and it's everywhere and it's all lit. And I was like, I felt like sometimes I will watch movies and I'm like, even if they're good, I'm like, man, you had the VFX syndrome and it missed a physical person that thinks of limitations, both as a tool to make something, obviously in CGI, you don't have limitations. You can just place anything anywhere, but her being there and helping us understand the limitations of the real thing, I feel like adds so much.
Because the tendency is to like, you can do anything. You can fill this place up with stacks of crates and big bins of random parts. And no, she was just like, okay, it's a mechanics place. This whole area in the middle has to be clear for the thing to land. But I mean, there's piles everywhere that this is like such a cluttered area, but it's a perfect little pile that's over here and the perfect little pile that's over there. But in a way that feels natural.
I agree. Yeah, the set decorators are very valuable. So, we're reaching our time today. We really just made it through season 1 of The Mandalorian, and we spent a good amount of time giving an overview, but In our next episode, we're jumping straight back into this process. We might have to finish some of the scenes from The Mandalorian Season 1, but then we're going to go straight into drawing over Season 2, Season 3, Ahsoka, Boba Fett, Skeleton Crew. So check back in if you are interested. Good talk, Safari. I'll talk to you later.